In this video, I'll give you the raw and unfiltered truth about whether you should get Apple's newest devices that launched this week. Now, I am a self-confessed Apple fanboy, don't judge, but I'm going to give you my absolutely unashamedly unbiased views. So let's get into it. Hi and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm a doctor who likes anything vaguely related to tech, so those are two things that I'll be talking about. If that might interest you, be sure to hit the subscribe button below. I'm going to cover Apple's new watch, the Series 7, the new iPad mini, and the iPhone 13. So let's get into the first of Apple's big updates for their products this week, the Apple Watch Series 7. There's been a slight change to the design to make the screen bigger. They claim it's 20% bigger than the previous Series 6, and 50% bigger than the Series 3. Other than that though, there wasn't much of a change to the hardware. They beefed up the number of workouts included in Fitness Plus, which is their subscription service for workouts, but it has the same monitors on the device as before, so an ECG and a pulse oximeter to check your oxygen levels, and I've done a separate video on the actual benefit of those monitors, which you can see on the link above. As for my honest opinion on whether it's worth getting, well, if you already own a Watch Series 3 or earlier, I would honestly consider it. It's not going to change your life, but if you've been waiting a few years for an upgrade, now is a good time given that the screen is bigger and it does contain the ECG and the pulse oximeter that isn't on those older models. But if you have anything newer than that, I really wouldn't bother. It hasn't changed enough since then to make it worth buying. On the other hand, if you've never owned an Apple Watch before and feel the need to add this to your range of other Apple products, then I would seriously consider it. But you could probably get just as much use out of the Apple Watch SE. That's their cheaper, no-frills model, and the one I would recommend for most people, unless you're really obsessed with having the newest model with the most features. Now let's talk about the iPad mini. Essentially they've revamped the hardware to make it look like the iPad Pro and the iPad Air. So that means they've ditched the bevel and made it full screen. They decided to leave off Face ID, similar to what they did with the iPad Air, and instead have the Touch ID sensor on the power button. It's also much faster than the previous iPad mini, so instead of being the model with the worst specs, it's now practically the same as the bigger iPad models, but in a more compact size. As for whether it's worth getting, well, if you already own an iPad mini and like the small size of it, this is probably a good time to upgrade. It's unlikely to get as big of an update for another few years, so you might as well get it now. If you don't own an iPad and you're thinking about it, I would actually recommend the bigger size of the iPad Air. For me, I just found that the mini wasn't that beneficial when you already have a phone and a laptop, whereas the size of the normal iPad, the Air, or the Pro makes much more sense. Now for the main event, what you've all been waiting for, the iPhone 13. Firstly, I'm surprised they went with this name because I know how superstitious people are. I mean, some hotels don't even have a 13th floor because people are so superstitious. And honestly, this is such a minor upgrade that it's really only worth getting the S on the name, like they usually do with the smaller upgrades every other year, generally. Now remember that Apple now have 4 versions of the iPhone each year. There's the iPhone 13 and the iPhone 13 mini, which are the same on the inside but have different sizes. And these are aimed at your average person who's not obsessed with Apple and isn't desperate for the best camera. Then they have their 2 premium versions, the iPhone 13 Pro and the Pro Max. Again, these two are same on the inside but different sizes. First, let's talk about some of the features that are present on all 4 models. Number 1, the notch that's been present on the top of the iPhone since the iPhone 10 has become smaller. I know, big deal, right? Well, it's about 20% smaller and probably won't even care. But another change to the iPhone, which is admittedly much cooler, is the ability to take videos with depth effect, which they're calling cinematic mode. And I think this is awesome, but honestly, I don't think most people are going to notice this. The kind of people that take photos or videos with the depth effect are probably the kind of people that own better cameras already, so I doubt most people will really notice or even care. Right, now let's cover the iPhone 13 and 13 mini specifically. There are 3 main upgrades compared to last year's iPhone 12. These are all pretty minimal for most people. The 13 has better image stabilization for the camera, it has a better battery life, lasting 2.5 hours longer than the 12, and it has a faster processor, the A15 compared to the A14. So, small upgrades really, and if you own an iPhone 11 or 12, honestly it's not really worth the upgrade. But if you do own an iPhone XS or earlier, now may be a good time to upgrade if you feel that your phone's becoming a bit slow or the battery isn't coping anymore, or maybe you want 5G. But if you're not that obsessed with having the best camera and just want a newer, faster phone, you could probably go with one of the older models, the iPhone 12 or even the 11. Although each year the iPhones have faster processors, most people won't even notice it for what they use their phones for. As for the iPhone 13 Pro and the Pro Max, well, these upgrades are also pretty minimal. The screen is slightly brighter and has a faster refresh rate, who really cares? The telephoto camera now has 3 times optical zoom, previously only 2 times, big deal. And each of the 3 new lenses on the Pro have night mode. Okay, not bad. The Pro can also now take photos in Apple Pro RAW and record video in 4K ProRes at 30 frames per second. Now if that sentence made absolutely no sense to you, then you do not need to buy the Pro. If on the other hand it did make sense to you, you probably own either a mirrorless camera or a DSLR, which can already do those things. So again, you probably don't need to buy the Pro. Which leads me to my next question. When the basic iPhone models are so good, why would anyone buy the Pro anymore? As far as I can tell, there are only 2 kinds of people who would. Either people who are so obsessed with Apple that they need their latest and best products all the time, so not me. Or people with enough money to burn that they don't really care how much it costs. So in summary, while each of these features are good, they're not really a huge upgrade, so you could easily give this year's iPhones a miss. As for stuff that they should have included but haven't, well, that will be in my next video. So stay tuned and make sure you hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.